Every day on the show pages at newstalkstl.com or just subscribe to your favorite shows on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere else you get your podcasts.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
President Macron and I have had a chance to spend some time together. We went to private dinner last night with our wives, and just came to tell you that we're leaving.
Well, there you go. More transparency from the least transparent White House we've ever seen. Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 1019 94.1 News Talk STL. Boy, Chris, that's the sign of a true totalitarian tyrant when they can say the quiet part out loud and be proud about it.
Yeah, exactly. And he has kind of a built-in excuse because half the nation thinks he's crazy along with the press, but they won't say it out loud. So they'll just say it's just a Joe Biden moment or a 80-year-old senile man moment. So they won't really get the scrutiny that it really should.
Mm-hmm. And the state visit with Macron had one bizarre experience after another built into it. Did you all see the handshake, the viral handshake?
No.
Where Joe Biden goes to it's another one of these Joe Biden awkward where he gets stuck. You know how Biden gets stuck a lot, and that's the sign I know of some various maladies as you get older. He goes to shake Macron's hand, and then he doesn't let go for a long time, and you could see Macron's kind of all right, dude, I get it. Can we move on now? And it's this bizarre moment where it's like Joe goes somewhere else for a while. And then he you can tell he visibly comes back and they move on. It's just, and Chris, it's amazing that the media is more than happy to give a dementia patient or someone who's obviously experiencing some cognitive decline a pass, and they shouldn't because he's the leader of the free world. The guy's got the nuclear football in his possession.
Well, they feel that he has cover now. If you read some of the post-election stories, Joe Biden is a genius. They should have listened to him all along on his strategy. He's been given new life. The governor of California said he will not challenge him. So it looks like Joe Biden, if he wants to run when he's 82 years old, will have a clear shot to the nomination. And once again, like they did during the campaign, they're propping him up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks like they're trying to hide him. Did you see that story? I caught a snippet of it where Biden is trying to convince his party to be done with caucuses. Did you see that today? Mm-mm. He's trying to convince the party that they should get rid of the Iowa caucuses.
Oh yeah. They said that at the top of the news and which is a mistake to me. They want to move the Iowa caucus from first and replace it with South Carolina. The argument, of course, is Iowa is a predominantly white state. It's a small state. It doesn't represent the country or their constituency, and so it's just a clear placate to Senator or Representative Clyburn of South Carolina, who saved Joe Biden's presidency. And South Carolina has a 40% Democratic black base there, so it's a giveaway to them in that respect. I like this process that the campaigns start in Iowa and in New Hampshire. Regardless that it's all white people, I like it because you have to go there and you have to shake a lot of hands and you've got to meet a lot of people, and the people get to know who you are. You can't fake it when you're in Iowa for 2 months, shaking hands, going to the pizza ranch where they all go and going to these different events. The people feel you and know who you are, and same in New Hampshire. And I think that's important, and it doesn't matter who the people are. These people get a good sense of who these candidates are.
Yeah, I think it has everything to do with sheltering Joe Biden in a different way, like they did in the last electoral cycle, because they know they can't have him out there running a traditional campaign.
Yeah. And what they're going to end up doing, putting the South Carolina primary first, is you're going to have not as much of a grassroots candidates visiting these places. You're going to have millions of dollars spent on ad campaigns. Our elections, the primary elections, are going to be TV and radio and internet campaigns instead of pressing the flesh, meeting people in their homes and bars, restaurants, and you're going to lose that. And that frightens me.
Yeah, me
it
as well.
It saddens me more than it frightens me.
It's a real shame how much of our traditions and the things that we enjoy as Americans that they're trying to tear down. Hey, before I forget, Pocket Watching with JT, of course, our special Friday night show is on beginning at 8 p.m. Stell, is that correct?
That's right, yes.
8 to 10 p.m.
Tonight.
8 to 10 p.m. JT invades the studio, takes over, and it's a wild, woolly show, man. You all should tune in. You can tune in, of course, here, JT's YouTube channel, of course, any of our streaming options as well on Rumble or Facebook, et cetera, and so forth. Pocket Watching with JT and Stell Ponticus, 8 to 10 p.m. every Friday evening. Next week is the giveaways. We're having the St. Louis Conservative Christmas. We'll be starting to give away some really cool items, tickets, and such and so forth on all 4 of our shows. And Chris, we've got a caller on the line right now. Sandra, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Sandra. Welcome to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
Good morning. Actually,
good morning.
Oh,
I like that.
It's producer Cass.
It's Cassandra. Get it right.
Cassandra.
My question is,
yes.
If somebody were to be driving through the People's Republic of Illinois, what level of caution would you urge them to proceed with, especially if a congressman objected their travels?
I tell you what, and we travel east to visit my in-laws, South Carolina and New York, and sad to say, I've gotten several tickets in Illinois. So watch out for Illinois when you're driving for speeding, because they do enforce their speeding laws, and I've got the depleted bank account to prove that.
Yeah,
this is what I hear.
Yeah, they don't mess around.
So folks know, this is producer Cass from my morning show in Springfield, and Chris, she is driving. She's over halfway through her trip. She's listening to us now as she rolls through the St. Louis land. She's driving from Springfield to Chicago. Cass, here's the other. Oh, you know what? Cass, we've got producer Stell here, and he's a Chicagoland. Stell, what advice would you give a young 20-something female who's driving to Chicago? Don't
lock your doors.
Don't drive. Don't go. Go. Turn around.
Lock your doors.
Turn around.
Window locks on.
No, Billy Long has urged me to do so multiple times.
Have fun on the lakefront. Enjoy downtown. Just be very cognizant and careful of your surroundings. That's the best advice I can give. But there's so much fun in the downtown area, so don't be afraid to go around and enjoy the Bean and Millennium Park, Grant Park, and all the area along the lakeshore. Do some shopping downtown. Maybe ride the L somewhere. Don't be scared of the L. But do keep aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, Cass, and I got some advice for you. Listen closely, okay? Cat, okay. Do not wear your MAGA hat and go get a Subway sandwich late at night in Chicago, okay?
On Lower Wacker Drive. Yeah, don't do that.
All right, don't do that.
One thing I was well warned of is that people in Illinois apparently don't believe in the Second Amendment. And I was strongly cautioned to not bring my concealed carry with me.
I was going to mention that too. To you.
Freedom and liberty doesn't exist across the Mississippi River, apparently. God bless Missouri.
There you go.
Amen.
Safe travels, Cass.
Yeah, Cass, be careful.
Thank you.
You're actually safe in most of Illinois. I think Stell would agree. Outside of Cook County, yeah, you're pretty good. It's like most of Missouri. Cass, you be safe.
I'll keep you posted on Twitter.
Thanks for listening.
See you.
All right, there she goes.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Cass.
All right, there she goes. Producer Cass from the morning show in
And all this
Springfield.
time I thought her name was Casanova. I'm just kidding.
You know what? I don't know that I realized it was Cassandra because I call her Cassidy.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah.
I thought it was Cassidy. I didn't know it was Cassandra.
She's got all these. She's got all these secrets. Yeah, Billy Long's been all over her. Congressman Billy Long's been all over her this week about the fact she's got some big deal up there with a bunch of her friends, and it's like an engagement party, and she has to go because it's her best friend. And Billy's like, just get a one-way flight and then drive back with them. And she's like, yeah, but they're leaving early and flights are expensive right now and I waited too long and so on and so forth. So, to be 20-something again.
Exactly.
You know?
No, the drive up there is fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
She'll be all right.
Just took the train.
She may, that's a good call, Chris. She could have just taken the train.
I mean, you're going to get, I've had some bad train experiences. You may not get there when they say you do. Have I ever told you guys my train trip from hell?
No, you have not.
Oh, my God. I was going, me and my brother were going to my grandfather's funeral in Tyler, Texas. And so the train was from Longview to Tyler. And so going down, it was okay, nice scenic. But I should have known something was wrong when we got to the station. The train was late. And we make a long story short, the train had two-hour stops. One, the conductor didn't show up in the other town to switch with that train conductor. And then we rode for a while, and then on the train in front of us broke down. So they had to try to get the train off the track, and we ended up getting to St. Louis like 4 or 5 hours late. It was supposed to connect to Chicago, and they were giving people hotel vouchers and stuff, but I was like, I will never ride a train again. It was only like my second time ever, but yeah, I call that the train trip from hell. Mm-hmm. It literally was.
I rode the train a lot as a kid, not just the Chicago area, interurban stuff, but around the country. My mom, my aunt, and I would take trips going to the West Coast when I was a little kid.
The scenery is beautiful.
It is, and we had no issues at all. But that was another time. That was back in the early to late 50s, early 60s, and train travel back then was awesome. Going from Chicago to Seattle and go through Glacier National Park, and in Canada take the Canadian Pacific through the Canadian Rockies to go to Victoria and Vancouver. My goodness, those were awesome trips. But you're right, it's different these days.
Yeah, but the scenery hasn't changed.
True.
I mean, it was beautiful. If you ever take a trip to Chicago, you see a lot of good scenery.
Sorry your train was late, though.
Oh, twice.
Man, that's brutal.
It was just...
That is brutal.
I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I mean, can you think of anything more boring being on a train with no internet service because you're absolutely in the middle of nowhere, just sitting there for 2 hours...
Looking at cows.
Looking at cows, waiting for them to, another conductor to show up or to get the broken train off the track that's in front of you.
Wow.
Yeah, because the problem with the train is it's great when it runs on time and leaves on time.
Yes.
But unlike an airplane, if your plane's late or so, you still take off and you're there in 2 hours, right? The trains, you're like, I still got 5 hours in front of me. So it's a whole different experience. The train ride from hell.
It was.
There we go.
Literally.
All right, we're about to hit a break here. It's nearly 4:19 here on News Talk STL. When we come back, we're going to speak to Zach Smith, our resident legal eagle at the Heritage Foundation. I don't think we've talked to Zach in quite a while because we had Thanksgiving last week. That's right. We were not here. Zach will be joining us to talk about the latest, greatest, or not so much so, from the Supreme Court. There's a big hearing coming up on the web designer who's being forced into doing something against her religious freedom beliefs. We'll talk about that case and so many others with Zach Smith of the Heritage Foundation next here on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 1019 94.1 News Talk STL.
For podcast articles and more, find us on newstalkstl.com. From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton with your first alert forecast. A wind advisory continues through 3 a.m. In fact, when the front passes through tonight around midnight, it can produce a quick and brief shower, but also some stronger winds right around midnight to 3 a.m. So some late night window rattling winds tonight. And then overnight after that brief shower potential, dry and colder behind this front. A low of 29, a high of just 39. A brighter day and sunny, but it's a winter feel on Saturday. Bundle up. Sunday, a low of 27, a high of 48, partly cloudy and dry. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Blindster.com was started in 2010 to provide custom blind shades and shutters at affordable prices. Their blinds are easy to install and shipping's free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com. It's 26 minutes now on southbound 55 from the 44 split to 270. Traffic basically crawling between the 44 split and Bates. An accident reported southbound 170 ramp to St. Charles Rock Road. An accident eastbound 270 at Lindbergh. Looks like it's on the inside shoulder. Slow westbound 64 Hampton to Bellevue, 19 minutes. Westbound 4064 between the Boone Bridge and I-70. And there's a crash in the city with people trapped South Jefferson at Cherokee. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
Have you been floored? Not until you've gone to Michael's Flooring Outlet. They've been a locally owned and operated family business for more than 28 years. You want variety? Michael's has carpet, hardwood, laminate, ceramic tile, luxury vinyl, natural stone, and many other options. Save money and get quality at Michael's. Plus, your installation will be done right the first time when you hire the experts at Michael's. You can shop in store at one of their 3 convenient locations or shop from home. Check out everything that Michael's has to offer at igotfloored.com.
If you're on Medicare, listen to this message.
Open enrollment for all Medicare participants is now open until December 7th.
Hi, this is Mike Butts with MB Health Insurance Agency. And regardless if you are new or renewing your health insurance, the process can be confusing and very time-consuming. MB Health is local here in St. Louis, and we will handle your enrollment quickly, properly, and effectively.
Call Mike Butts and his expert team at 314-544-5400.
Or visit mbhealth.com.
What if everything you thought and believed to be true about owning and buying your home turned out to be wrong?
Straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home.
We're the only country that has one of those. Most other countries, considering like Canada, the UK, they don't have long-term fixed-rate mortgages like that. They're all variable-rate mortgages.
HomeWise with Michael Midget, Sunday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL.
Fox News commentary.
Pedophiles are being released into the streets of California by the thousands. This is what happens in a society that prioritizes felon coddling over decent, law-abiding Americans. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
We conquer cancer. For the mom-to-be who is out of treatment options. For the doctor who has a brilliant idea but needs research funding. For the people who faced cancer head-on and climbed incredible heights while they were with us. For the children who celebrate the end of chemo. We conquer cancer for all who have been touched by it. Conquer Cancer accelerates breakthroughs in research and care for every cancer, every patient, everywhere. Join us at conquer.org.
Of sex offenders and pedophiles are being released in California after spending less than a year behind bars. In fact, a search of California's Megan's Law database, and you'll see it's more than 7,000 sex offenders convicted of lewd or lascivious acts with a child under 14 years of age. And that short sentence of less than a year, well, it's not some accident. In Gavin Newsom's California, convicted pedophiles spend on average 2 years and 10 months in prison. This is the California standard. Second chances, redemption, and rehabilitation, my foot. If you're an adult who abuses anyone, let alone a child, you're a sicko, irredeemable, and unreachable. And maybe God Almighty will forgive you at the gates of heaven, but while you're here on earth, your perverted behind should rot behind the gates of prison. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can listen to all of my hot takes at foxnewscommentary.com.
St. Louis's place to talk.
Because that's where the votes are getting stolen. When you get into the facts and logic and reason thing, it drives me crazy because you're right.
I call it the oh my God virus.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. You're listening to Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
I think the country's going to have to learn about what's going on in this country. The majority of counties in this country have declared that they are not going to enforce state and federal gun laws. They have decided that they are going to essentially refuse to implement laws that are on the books. That is a growing problem in this country. And I think we're going to have a conversation about that in the United States Senate. Do we want to continue to supply funding to law enforcement in counties that refuse to implement state and federal gun laws. Red flag laws are wildly popular, right? You're just temporarily taking guns away from people that...
So you want to withhold money for law enforcement?
I think we have to have a conversation about whether we can continue to fund law enforcement in states where they are refusing to implement these gun laws.
Let's talk about the constitutionality of that with our next guest.
Oh, it's all perfectly legal.
You are out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. The whole trial is out of order.
Zach Smith, legal fellow with the Heritage Foundation.
You know, I ask you a lot of predictions. Can you predict what the Supreme Court probably will do with this action?
Swooping in here as he does every Friday afternoon. Our resident legal eagle, Zach Smith of the Heritage Foundation. Zach, you must have been on some super secret assignment this week because I couldn't find you when I was gallivanting around world headquarters at the Heritage Foundation. Your good friend John Cooper, as Vic Porcelli calls him, the good John Cooper, gave me the tour of the place. I saw Hans and the gang up there, and I see you guys are under construction right now. You've got quite the world headquarters there at the Heritage Foundation in D.C.
Well, I'm sorry to have missed you, Tim. I'm actually down in the free state of Florida right now, which is always a nice place to be in December. But we're under massive construction right now, which will hopefully be done sooner rather than later, but will allow us to host even more folks like you when they come to town to see us.
Yeah, Zach, I think you guys are putting up the Tim Jones and Chris Arps production studio for when Chris and I blow into town anytime.
Well, listen, please come by and come see us, and we'll make sure to treat you well.
We will.
Zach, an appeals court has stopped the special master review of the documents involved in the Mar-a-Lago case. What does that mean exactly, and what happens next?
Well, I'll give you the legal answer, Chris. Who knows? No, I mean, look, I think is a very fascinating opinion in a lot of ways. It's actually written by three relatively conservative judges, Chief Judge William Pryor on the 11th Circuit there, who's well-known in conservative legal circles, and then also Judge Grant and Judge Andrew Brasher, both of whom are Trump appointees. And I think one of the things that is interesting about this opinion, Chris, it really does dispel this notion that Trump-appointed judges are just going to do, his bidding no matter what. We've seen this play out time and time again, this false narrative by those on the left. But we've seen, Trump-appointed judges, as should all appointed judges, are exercising their own judgment about what is the appropriate application of the law. Now, there can be good faith disagreements about what that is, but I think this does dispel that certain narrative on the left. Now, in terms of what happens next, I think we're going to see that play out over the next several days and weeks in Judge Eileen Cannon's courtroom. This opinion from the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals basically said that Judge Cannon didn't have the jurisdiction, the legal authority to hear this case in the manner that she did. And so we're going to wait to see what happens. We don't know yet whether Trump and his legal team will appeal this decision, ask the Supreme Court to review it, but we should be finding out sooner rather than later.
Zach, I know you and your colleagues at the Heritage Foundation are up to your eyeballs in these religious freedom and liberty cases, and at the same time keeping an eye on the Disrespect for Marriage Act, as your colleague Sarah Perry calls it there at the Heritage Foundation, right, that the Senate just passed out. Zach, many of us watched with great disappointment. Many of our listeners have chimed in and said they were very disappointed that our own retiring Senator Roy Blunt was one of the 12 Republicans that helped advance that bill. Zach, my question for you is, what will be the juxtaposition of the so-called Respect for Marriage Act and this case that the Supreme Court is going to hear, the case of the lady from Colorado who's being compelled as a web designer to engage in practices that she says are against her religious freedom beliefs? I mean, could this Supreme Court case possibly temper this Respect for Marriage Act and some of the harm it's going to do on people's beliefs?
Well, it's possible, Tim, but I suspect what we're going to see happening if this, so-called Respect for Marriage Act passes is we're going to see more of these types of vexatious lawsuits, lawsuits that I think are really designed to harass certain individuals who adhere to traditional views on marriage and family and those sorts of things, like Lori Smith, this website designer out of Colorado, does. Disrespect for Marriage Act is going to make these types of lawsuits much, much easier. On top of that, it's going to also make it easier for governments, whether it's state, local, or federal, to target those individuals for potential harassment. Look, don't forget, the Biden administration pushed for and received funding for 87,000 new IRS agents, and we're already hearing rattling from some on the left that these agents should focus on and potentially revoke the tax-exempt status of churches, religious schools, and other organizations that adhere to traditional religious beliefs. And so, unfortunately, instead of tampering that type of conflict between, current so-called civil rights laws and, religious liberty, I suspect this act will, in fact, exacerbate many of those tensions, will make it easier for folks of many genuine religious beliefs to be targeted and harassed. And I think the people of Missouri are right to be very disappointed in Roy Blunt for his vote on this bill.
Zach, after a 3-year court battle, a House committee has finally acquired Donald Trump's tax returns. And the dubious rule that this House committee can use to acquire them is basically they can go on a fishing expedition if they want. Just seems, besides wrong, unconstitutional. It seems like you have to have some reason to acquire someone's personal records. Can you expound on that some?
Yeah, look, this is a troubling trend, Chris. So there's a specific statute that provides that certain House committees, in this case, the House Ways and Means Committee chairman, can make a written request to get tax returns and other information related to certain taxpayers. Now, I think what everyone should understand is this isn't a statute that only gives that power as it relates to elected officials or former presidents or current presidents. They can request the tax information on anyone. Mm-hmm. And not only can they request this information, they can actually publish these tax returns as part of the congressional record and make it public. Now, ordinarily, there are very strong safeguards, or there are supposed to be strong safeguards around tax information, tax returns, other personal information that restrict, what the IRS can release, who they can release it to, what it can be used for, and there are stiff penalties if those provisions are violated. And so typically, in order for a congressional committee to get this type of information, they would have to show there's a legislative need for it. Now, the House Ways and Means Committee, they said they're, considering to revise, how presidential tax audits are conducted to see if there's additional oversight, additional funding, that sort of thing needed. I think Donald Trump and his legal team made a fairly compelling argument that this was by and large pretextual to get the tax returns. But look, setting aside the legality, Chris, Judge Trevor McFadden, who is the district court judge hearing this case, he said, if the House Ways and Means Committee chooses to publish Donald Trump's tax returns, that'll be like inviting a plague onto their own house that will likely be reciprocated against them in the future. And so I thought it was very interesting that Judge McFadden, even though he ruled in their favor, basically said, look, even though you have the legal authority to do this, you may want to think twice before you actually do it.
Mm-hmm. Zach, would you update our listeners on what the heck is going on with this this latest Joe Biden boondoggle? It seems like everything he touches turns into a complete and utter disaster. Regarding the student loan forgiveness program, Zach, is that forgiveness program, has it still been stayed? Is it still blocked? And I heard today that it's been punted to February, I think, for the court to actually hear argument on this. Zach, this doesn't seem to be that complicated, but now we're going to kick the can down the road, I guess, till February. Could you give our listeners an update on this?
Well, it's actually not as bad of news as it seems at first blush, Tim. I think one of the shocking things, I know we've talked about it before, is that the Biden administration repeatedly takes actions that it knows it doesn't have the authority to do.
Right.
So basically dares the courts to strike it down and knows that in that intervening gap of however many weeks or months it takes for a court to issue a ruling and work its way through the federal system, that they've essentially bought themselves some political runway to push their radical, lawless policies. Now, what happened in this case, the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, they actually stopped the Biden administration's loan forgiveness plan from going into effect while it worked its way through the federal courts. And so what happened is the Biden administration came to the Supreme Court, was basically asking for this stay to be lifted so that the program could go into effect while it's being litigated. But the Supreme Court said, no, we're going to leave the stay in case. And by the way, we're actually going to go ahead and have it bypass a couple of steps in the federal court process and come directly to us so we can get a final decision on this. So this is a somewhat unique step. It's one we're starting to see the court take more often, but essentially is what the Supreme Court has said is, let's bypass, these other lower federal courts. It's a very important case. Let it come straight to us at the U.S. Supreme Court. We're going to decide the issue finally, have oral arguments on the merits in February, and reach a final decision after that. So I think it'll be a very interesting case, a very important one. And for now, the Biden administration's student loan plan cannot go into effect.
Zach, on December 7th, the Supreme Court is set to hear the Moore versus Harper case, which deals with the North Carolina redistricting process. The Atlantic says that this case could have dire implications for American democracy. Is that hyperbole?
Chris, hyperbole? You mean to say the Atlantic would try to fearmonger and make outrageous claims? Shocked as always. Look, you're absolutely right to say that's hyperbole. Essentially what's being asked here is, what's the authority? How does the Constitution allocate authority between not only the state and the federal governments, but also within the state governments themselves when they're drawing federal congressional districts? And I think that's the key thing to remember in this case. The federal Constitution gives state legislatures. In other parts of the Constitution, they give certain powers to the states generally. They give powers to the executives of the states. And in some places, they designate legislature. And in this particular case, they designated the legislature as being the predominant body that's supposed to make election rules and procedures within their state. Now, what we've seen increasingly over the past several years is other state entities, whether it be the governor or in this case out of North Carolina, the state Supreme Court, purporting to override that authority on either a state statute or state constitutional grounds. That's something that's very problematic. It seems to clash with the plain text of the Constitution. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens with this case. And I also think it's important to keep in mind, if someone thinks that a state legislature is acted inappropriately or has some kind of overstepped their authority, the Constitution provides for a backstop. It says that Congress can step in and make laws that essentially override the state legislatures in certain cases. And so this will be a very interesting case. But unfortunately, I think, the Atlantic and others are, hyping it up needlessly so.
Zach, what's coming up on the docket for the Supreme Court before the end of the year? Will they hear any more cases over the next few weeks in December, or are they on break until January?
No, they will hear a few more. They heard a very important one this week, the U.S. versus Texas case involving immigration-related issues, where the Biden administration is shockingly not enforcing immigration laws as they should. Next week, as you mentioned it, they're going to hear the 303 Creative case, the Lori Smith case. They're also going to hear Moore versus Harper. And so the court's going to be very busy hearing some very important cases before they take their winter hiatus in late December.
Zach,
excellent.
Thank you so much. And didn't get a chance to listen to the podcast today, but my wife is going out of town, so I will have plenty of time to listen. So I can't wait.
Well, I appreciate that, Chris. And this week, we actually talk about U.S. versus Texas, and we have a former ambassador and Kansas Governor Sam Brown back on the show to talk about the state of religious liberty, not only here within the United States, but also more globally as well. So it's an interesting conversation.
Senator Brownback was my late senator, don't call him late, Jim Talent. They were roommates when they were senators together.
Oh, excellent. Well, it was a great conversation, and I enjoyed getting a chance to chat with him. And I think he had some great insights into where we're going wrong on the religious liberty front.
Can't wait to listen.
Timely topic indeed. You can find that at TZ Smith on Twitter, heritage.org. Zach, always great catching up with you. Covered a lot of ground today, and we'll do it again next week. Zach, have a great weekend. Thanks for joining Chris and I.
Thanks, Zach.
Of course. Good talking to you both. Take care.
You take care. Zach Smith there with the Heritage Foundation.
Florida in December. Lucky guy.
Yes, he is. He's a Floridian through and through. All right, it's 4:40 in the PM. We'll take a break here, and then when we come back, We'll speak to Chris about Chris's Corner.
Yeah, it's like we got a guest coming up or something?
Just you.
Yeah.
Chris will be discussing where he was and what he was up to the last couple of days.
Actually, it's going to be the Kanye West quote-unquote meltdown.
Yes. Featured on, where was he? He was on,
the
InfoWars.
Alex Jones show.
Alex Jones. Maybe the last place Kanye West should be going, but we'll see what Chris thought about his appearance there when we return here on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show at 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. Welcome home.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
Support is sponsored by Blindster.com. Blindster.com sells custom-made blind shades and shutters that are easy to install at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds, custom-made for your windows and guaranteed to fit. Don't hire a pro, do it yourself and save big. Blindster.com. Accident northbound 270 at 170, completely blocking the exit lanes 270. A crash eastbound 270 at Lindbergh, everything's on the inside shoulder. You're crowded westbound 70 at Route K, an accident westbound 70 at Forestell, and a vehicle fire westbound 70 west of Forestell. Watch for brake lights at Hogle Parkway and eastbound 70, slow for a look. 26 minutes southbound 270, McDonald 255, slow southbound 170 between the Forest Park Parkway and 64. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton with your first alert forecast. A wind advisory continues through 3 a.m. In fact, when the front passes through tonight around midnight, it can produce a quick and brief shower, but also some stronger winds right around midnight to 3 a.m. So some late night window rattling winds tonight. And then overnight after that brief shower potential, dry and colder behind this front. A low of 29, a high of just 39. A brighter day and sunny, but it's a winter feel on Saturday. Bundle up. Sunday, a low of 27, a high of 48, partly cloudy and dry. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
Whether at home or at work, you're mobile. So when you're mobile, stay mobile. Keep St. Louis's home for conservative talk with you wherever you go. Download the News Talk STL app in the App Store or at newstalkstl.com.
You know, it's December 2nd, and there was a slight chill in the air earlier in the week, and now it's really beginning to feel like Christmas to me. And during Christmas, we eat a lot of sweets and eat a lot of junk food, and we don't take care of our teeth like we should. You know, we recently had Dr. Alan Link on from the Dental Link, and he gave some good advice. He said, if you're eating sweets at night, you should not go to bed without brushing your teeth because that sugar will eat away at your teeth and you could end up with missing teeth. And if you have missing teeth or you suffer from loose dentures, many dental implants might be the solution for you. Many dental implants are less invasive, less painful, and your recovery time is much shorter. Plus, best of all, the cost to you is much less than with older, more traditional dental implants. 2 convenient locations in Baldwin and Melville. Call the Dental Link today at 314-794-6464. That's 314-794-6464. TheDentalLink.com.
Are you tired of hard chlorinated water drying your skin out, tasting bad, and ruining your fixtures? Jones Air and Water Treatment has a solution to this pollution. Our Hydratech H2O leaves you with great tasting, soft water at all fixtures in your home with 1 unit. Call Jones Air and Water at 636-899-1040 or visit us on the web at joneswater.com. You can be a filter or buy a filter. Jones Air and Water, 636-899-1040 or joneswater.com on the web. Call us now.
Buckle up, Buttercup. What's new, fresh, and definitely shaking up the airwaves?
Johnny's Hideout in High Ridge presents the Definitely Holly Show.
Hi, this is Holly, a conservative millennial, and I am proud to be the newest member of the News Talk STL family. Every Saturday, we tackle controversial and hot topics and what's going on in our local community.
The Definitely Holly Show.
This Saturday evening at 5
on News Talk STL. Brought to you by Hiatus Tequila. The Vic Porcelli Show.
Monday at 9:41, frequent contributor to the show, Mark Mix, president of the National Right to Work Committee, will talk to us about unions and sick days.
Weekday mornings at 9 on News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. It's the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
You don't know me, but I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell.
Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
Still rocking.
The Doobies have extensive connections to St. Louis, right?
Yes. One lead singer. Is there any other person from St. Louis, or is it Michael McDonald?
I think it's just Michael.
Yeah. Just Michael.
Mm-hmm. You know, a little story here I'll share with you real quick since you brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy and I were at a concert a few years ago. Michael did, I think it was a Christmas concert at Stiefel.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
And he brought out Bonnie Bramlett.
Oh.
That was a shocker, and it was great to see Bonnie, and she may still live on the east side. I believe, didn't she grow up in the Granite City area?
I have to admit, that was a fake exasperation. I don't know who she is. I have to admit, that was fake. I have no idea who she is.
Delaney and Bonnie? Does that ring a bell from the late 60s, early 70s?
Is that a purse? Delaney and Bonnie?
Sounds like it should be. Or a food store. Fancy food store.
Great.
No, I don't know her.
That's all right. Great singer. Did a lot of stuff with a lot of rock bands back in the late 60s, early 70s. And Bonnie still had some great vocals that night. And it was just a total surprise to see her show up on the stage. He introduced her as a special guest. And here she saunters out onto the stage. And I'm thinking, that's Bonnie Bramlett. And sure enough, he introduced her. And that was a neat part of that concert. So Michael tied that all together that night.
Excellent. And you brought this song in. I told you that... what's the song that I said that one of my Doobie favorites? What a Fool Believes. But
right.
I forgot about this. This is probably second in my all-time Doobie list.
You're welcome.
Maybe I shouldn't Doobie list. Sound like, never mind.
Your Doobie list.
You know what I mean.
All of a sudden, I'm back in the door.
Yeah, the Doobie list.
Make sure you tag that, Chris. Or,
the Doobie list.
We're going to talk about... that's a nice little drop.
Yes,
Got my Doobie list. Chris Arps saying that.
You know what? I remember back when Romper Room, though, one of the bee was called Doobie. Remember that still? Doobie the bee?
Yes.
Doobie. Yeah.
Yes.
You remember that, Doobie?
I sort of remember Romper Room. Yeah.
Oh, Romper Room.
Hey, speaking of harmony,
Huge.
And voices, hard to beat good harmony and voices. I feel like we should play. I don't know if you can insert this anywhere before the end of the show, still over the next hour or so. I just want to give a little homage to the passing of Christine McVie,
heard
from
that
Fleetwood Mac. I wasn't. I'm not a huge Fleetwood Mac fan, but I am a fan. My wife, Suzanne's a big Fleetwood Mac fan, and when I heard her that she passed, and then Vic played a lot of Fleetwood Mac yesterday. Man, she was so talented. You know, another one of those. You hear her start singing, it's like I can name that person in two notes. You know?
And the sad thing too is these '60s rock stars, they're in their early '80s to mid '80s, and unfortunately, there are going to be a lot more iconic rock stars that we're going to be waking up or getting the message over our phone that they have passed on. Well, hey, the Chris's Corner today is going to be on Kanye West's recent quote-unquote meltdown. I'm going to give my opinion here in Chris's Corner.
Chris.
The whole thing is a joke.
Good God, we got to do something here, people.
It's not personal. It's strictly business.
My favorite black leader of all time is Frederick Douglass, who asked after emancipation, well, we just freed the blacks, now what are we going to do with them? And his answer was, leave us alone.
And if you don't know, now you know.
And now, Chris's Corner.
You know, if you've been following the latest situation with Kanye West, now known as Ye, you know that he had, quote-unquote, another meltdown on the Alex Jones show the other day. Mr. Ye appeared on the set with a black mask on. He also apparently wore a Star of David with a swastika inside of that, and really said some extremely inflammatory things where I think he has effectively ended his career. people have been saying for years, and he admitted that he had bipolar disorder, and that a lot of times that he doesn't take his medication. I think also that you can see sort of the decline of Kanye West after his mother died after liposuction surgery. She was a huge influence in his life. She was his manager. She was his everything, and you've kind of seen maybe a decline in that. I don't want to say that Kanye West is crazy or mental or off his meds. I think Kanye West is a very intelligent man, and I think he knows exactly what he is doing. And I think what we're witnessing right now is a man who basically says, I have absolutely nothing to lose now. You have the IRS is allegedly suing him for $50 million. He has lost his family and his kids. He has to pay his wife $200,000 in alimony now, and he's given her the house next door that he bought to be close to his kids. He has seen his personal fortune go from $1.5 billion to $400,000, and now he is basically a pariah within the entertainment industry, where he has made his living and his fame. And I think what we are witnessing is a man that is extremely frustrated, and he blames a certain segment of the population, the Jews, for quote unquote controlling him and taking away his freedom of speech. I think that's what this is all about more than anything. I don't think Kanye West is crazy. I think he is frustrated. And unfortunately, the route that he has taken to express that frustration has made his situation even worse. I have to tell you, I fear for Kanye West and his life. I don't look. I'm not usually a conspiracy theory type of person, but if Kanye West is passes on in the next few weeks or days or whatever, I will be very skeptical if it's ruled a suicide. I've talked about this earlier in the week on my Chris's Corners about the music industry and the demonic influences that are involved in it. Ye, a few years ago at a concert, mentioned that he was, the devil was in control of his music, and he had basically signed a blood contract. I've mentioned on here before of Bob Dylan doing a interview with 60 Minutes years ago, where he said that the reason that he was able to have the fame that he did is because he signed a contract with the man. These are his own words. You can look all of this stuff up. And there's another report that I saw recently. I've never heard of the group. It's Cigarettes and Dragons or something like that. The lead singer said, I know I shouldn't be saying this stuff, but he said the Illuminati is real, that we sign blood contracts in order to have the fame that we are, and if something happens to me, it happens to me. I know this sounds crazy. I said earlier in the week about Gus Frame that these people, the easiest way to deceive people is to be right out in plain sight. And we've seen that with the Balenciaga, where they have slowed down the tape of the video, and it spells out Baal, one of the evil prophets in the Bible, Baal. These people are literally hiding in plain sight, and because of that, I fear for Kanye West. I would not be shocked. I hope nothing happens to him. I hope he has a very long life with his family. I hope that he can get over the extreme frustration that he has, that I think that is misplaced against a group of people. I think that you can be mad at people that run a certain industries that you are in, but to condemn a whole race and a whole group, that's where it goes so far. I said before that if he had any issue, he should have mentioned the people that were with these companies. Don't slight an entire race. And I think that's where he has made his mistake. But, we are a redemptive society now. We see that people get second chances. But, guys, I got to tell you, after yesterday where he said Hitler basically had good traits and that you can't condemn him and all that, I just don't see him ever making a comeback in the entertainment industry ever again. And that is Chris's Corner.
So is this like in his mind, do you think this is some master plan of his where he's like gonna okay, I'm gonna tear everything down, I'm gonna blow everything up, and then I'm going to come back reborn again? Or do you think he's just kind of wildly just kind of whipsawing back? He seems like he's mad at somebody.
What does he have to lose? He's got the IRS is suing him for $50 million. You just lost your family. Your fortune has been cut 2/3. You are an absolute pariah to everybody now because of your actions. I think, and he's lashing out in a way that is not good. And it's one of these things where you wish that he had someone in his life that if he went to them and said, hey, I'm considering saying this, doing this, that somebody could stop him and say, look, I understand your frustration and your pain and everything, but think about what you're doing. This is not a good idea. Think about the legacy of your kids. You know, your kids are going to be walking around and people are going to be pointing at their father. You're an anti-Semite. You love Hitler. Think about your kids, Ye, instead of the frustration that you're feeling by these industry executives.
Yeah, does he have a friend, an advisor? Does he have a confidant? Is there somebody?
Yeah, Nick Fuentes and Milo Yiannopoulos now. That's his friend. They're running his campaigns. Every event that he goes to, they're with him. So that's his boys now.
I just don't know much about him, so I was wondering, is there a person that has helped him along with his career that he trusts? Does he have an advisor?
Well, I said his wife. His mother was his manager.
So his mom being gone, you believe is a big part of this.
Big time. That's when he kind of went off the rails. That's when his first incident when he went up on stage and took the mic from Kelly Clarkson or whatever and said that Beyonce should have won Best Album or something. That was a few, felt relatively close to when his mother died. But I don't think he's crazy. I don't think he's nuts. He's very intelligent. I think he's just misguided and misdirected right now. And he's like, I'm going to burn the whole damn thing down.
Yeah. Time will tell if this is the end of Ye or the beginning of a new chapter. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, man. America's a wild place, that is for sure. All right, we've got to get out of this segment. We've got the 5 o'clock hour straight ahead, the Speaker Stump Speech. I'm going to prepare us for our 525 guest that we can talk to Dr. Hedlund about exploring this deeper and further. The jobs report came out today. Of course, the Joe Biden administration is crowing about it. Are there warning signs? That next. News Talk STL.
Hey, Columbo here for our family dentist, Dr. Matt Boscia at New Creation Dental Care, a one-stop solution for all your family's dental needs, including braces. Dr. Boscia uses the My Forever Smile Braces system, which straightens teeth many times in less than a year for half the price of traditional braces. Traditional braces or Invisalign can cost $6,000 or more, but Dr. Boscia only charges $29.98 for My Forever Smile, and incentives and insurance can lower the price even more, plus New Creation offers in-office financing. Learn more at newcreationdentalcare.com.
When it comes to spending your tax dollars and teaching your kids, governments and school districts should be an open book. But in Missouri, that's not always the case. Recently, the Show Me Institute sent out a sunshine law request to school districts across the state, asking for information on whether certain topics are being taught. Specifically, a controversial one called critical race theory was included in the list. Many districts didn't respond. Some wanted to charge large fees to process the documents. Lee's Summit outside Kansas City wanted over $35,000. A rural district, Morgan County, wanted $15,000. The Sunshine Law does allow charging a reasonable fee for sending out information, but there's nothing reasonable about $35,000 or $15,000. These districts should want to be transparent about their curriculums. Taxpayers deserve to know what their kids are being taught. Learn more at showmeinstitute.org. The Show Me Minute has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
Free speech is alive and well in America.
Thanks for taking my call.
Right here.
You know what's going on?
Have a great awakening.
You see through the smoke screen.
It's cool to be woke.
News Talk STL.
Until it's not.
News, analysis, opinion. St. Louis's place to talk.
Freedom of speech is one of the anchors of our society.
News Talk STL. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
This hour from townhall.com, I'm Keith Peters reporting. Russia has rejected Western demands that it pull out completely from Ukraine as part of any future talks to end the war. Correspondent Charles de Ledesma reports.
Spokesman Dmitry Peskov has reiterated that President Vladimir Putin remains open to talks, but that the demand that Moscow withdraws its troops from Ukraine first is unacceptable. The comments came as Putin spoke on the phone with Germany's Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who's urging a diplomatic solution that would include Russia leaving Ukraine. Scholz made clear to Putin that there must be such a solution as quickly as possible, which includes a withdrawal of Russian troops. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
The nation's employers continue to show resilience in the face of aggressive interest rate hikes by the Fed.
According to the Labor Department, employers added 263,000 jobs in November, while the unemployment rate stayed at 3.7%. Last month's job growth was just below October's job gain of 284,000. With not enough people available to fill jobs, businesses are having to offer higher pay to attract and keep workers.
Correspondent Jeremy House. All year inflation has surged while the Fed has imposed ever higher borrowing rates. InfoWars host Alex Jones has filed for personal bankruptcy protection in Texas. Jones cited debts that include nearly $1.5 billion he's been ordered to pay to families who sued him over his conspiracy theories about the Sandy Hook school massacre. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection Friday in Houston. Jones acknowledged the filing on his InfoWars broadcast. He said the bankruptcy case will prove he's broke and asked viewers to shop on his website to help keep the show on the air. On Wall Street, they're up by 34 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
Relief Factor, pain relief that's natural, pain relief that works, and pain relief that attacks the source of the pain. That's the experience of tens of thousands of Americans who are taking Relief Factor right now. See their incredible video endorsements at relieffactor.com and then order your 3-week quick starter pack for just $19.95. That's less than $1 a day. Find out if it can work for you like it works for me by ordering your 3-week quick starter pack today. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. Be the next success story.
Hi, my name's Adam Barada. I'm the owner of Advantage Gold, the highest rated precious metals firm in the country. Now, we've won the Best of TrustLink award 4 years in a row because we educate our clients on how to buy gold and silver the right way. We don't pay celebrity spokespeople millions of dollars. We'd rather pass that value on to you. Call 800-900-8000 and speak with one of our experts. We'll send you a free gold kit along with my latest national best-selling book, The Great Devaluation. Call 800-900-8000. Call 800-900-8000.
Here's the Wall Street Business Report.
Worries about inflation weighed on Wall Street, leaving major indexes mixed. After another bumpy day of trading, the S&P ended down 0.1%, and the Nasdaq lost 0.2% after being down even more earlier in the day. The Dow ended slightly higher. A government report showing that wages rose last month spooked investors, since it could mean the Federal Reserve will be able to ease up on its fight against reflation. The Dow gained 34 points to finish at 34,429. The Nasdaq lost 21 to 11,461. The S&P 500 dropped 4 points to 4,071. New York oil fell $1.24 to $79.98 a barrel. For the Wall Street Business Report, I'm John Scott.
News and analysis at townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters. There's a kids' clothes recall you need to know about.
The Consumer Product Safety Commission issues a recall for some kids' clothes that feature Disney characters. The Bintex shirts and pants have dangerously high levels of lead in the textile ink. The clothes were made in Egypt and were sold at various stores, including Ross, TJ Maxx, Burlington, and Amazon.com. Tasha Stevens reporting.
The United States' newest nuclear stealth bomber is making its public debut after years of secret development. The new bomber is part of the Pentagon's answer to rising concerns over a future conflict with China. The B-21 Raider gets its name from the 1942 Doolittle raid over Tokyo and is the first new American bomber aircraft built in more than 30 years. Almost every aspect of the B-21 Raider program is classified. The Pentagon provided the public its first glimpse of the Raider at an invitation-only event in Palmdale, California. More at townhall.com.
Hey, how you doing? Santa Vic here.
And Santa's head, Vic head, here.
Right. And you can win some great prizes with News Talk STL's St. Louis Conservative Christmas.
You forgot the ho-ho-ho.
What?
You forgot the ho-ho-ho.
Oh!
No, ho-ho.
Oh!
A St. Louis Conservative Christmas. Log on to newstalkstl.com for your chance to win. Brought to you in part by the Great Harvest Bread Company in Maplewood, the St. Louis Ballet, and St. Louis Union Station.
Oh!
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Blindster.com started in 2010 to provide custom blind shades and shutters at affordable prices. Their blinds are easy to install and shipping's free. Don't hire an expensive professional. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com. An accident partially blocking the northbound 270 ramp to I-70. Watch for those brake lights all the way back to Page. Looks like an accident eastbound 270 at Riverview. That has commuters backed up at Bell Fountain. A vehicle fire reported westbound 70 at 79. And then a solid jam on westbound 70 between Wentzville Parkway and a vehicle fire west of Forestell. There's a crash westbound 4064 at Prospect, bringing traffic to a complete stop, and expect delays southbound 55, the 44 split to Bates. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton with your first alert forecast. A wind advisory continues through 3 a.m. In fact, when the front passes through tonight around midnight, it can produce a quick and brief shower, but also some stronger winds right around midnight to 3 a.m. So some late night window rattling winds tonight. And then overnight after that brief shower potential, dry and colder behind this front. A low of 29, a high of just 39. A brighter day and sunny, but it's a winter feel on Saturday. Bundle up. Sunday, a low of 27, a high of 48, partly cloudy and dry. That's the latest First Alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness 101. Wellness 101 is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense, science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on News Talk STL. For more information, visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
Since 2007, the state of Missouri and local governments have handed out almost $5 billion in tax subsidies or abatements to private developers. That money could have gone to basic services like schools and public safety. And studies show these subsidies don't produce the promised jobs and growth. If developers want to build a sports stadium or shopping mall, why should they be given our tax dollars to do it? It's time to reform economic development subsidies. The Show Me message has been brought to you by Show Me Institute and Show Me Opportunity.
St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
What citizen wouldn't want to make America great again?
Live and local.
And their leadership has been substandard.
I think the word substandard is immensely polite.
This is News Talk STL. Tim Jones and Chris Arps in the afternoon.
The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
The more you remove voting from Election Day, the more opportunity you're offering for people to commit fraud.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I think the Democrats are so short-sighted in this tactic they have now to just cheat at any cost to win elections.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you.
What are we doing wrong here?
As a former leader in the House, I think you can put your finger on it. It's called leadership. We don't have it.
Tim Jones and Chris Arps.
Okay, who's the next question? Got my list here. Is it my turn to call on someone? Right? Okay, how about NPR, Tom Merkeith?
Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 5:09 in the PM here at 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL. No, that was not a repeat, but they pretty much all sound the same. Joe Biden's latest press conference following his first state visit of Emmanuel Macron from France, trying to figure out which reporter he's supposed to call on for which pre-prepared question next. This looks so much not like the United States of America, Chris. It looks like a banana republic.
Yeah, our president is in obvious decline. We talked about that clip this morning on Newsmax, and we also talked about the fact that the press secretary insisted that President Joe Biden has visited the border. And records indicate the last time he visited the border was as vice president in 2008. But she was insistent, adamant about it. Reporters were calling her out on it, and she acted like she had the truth on her side.
It's like we're watching a show, of a bunch of people pretending to be running the White House. It just looks like some really bad B movie because none of them know what they're talking about. Joe Biden's trying to figure out which of his cue cards he's supposed to pull out next. Obvious issues that we should be tackling, this administration is completely ignoring.
And as we talked about earlier, and the media are complicit and covering up for him, and they feel that they have cover now because the elections weren't a blowout for the Democrats as they thought it was, and they are incredibly blaming Joe Biden for the Democrats' resurrection.
Can I bring up one other note from that meeting with Macron?
Absolutely.
He made a reference to the founding of our country, giving thanks to France for being there to help us with the foundation of our nation, and expressed our thanks to Marcus de Lafayette. Not Marquis de Lafayette. Marcus de Lafayette. And Macron's sitting right there next to him, and I'm sure he had to be thinking, why am I even here?
This is such a joke. I'm just doing it to senile old idiot,
Man.
It is. And then, and then the background of all this is it just shows it's like the decline of the United States of America is going on right behind Joe Biden, and he's completely oblivious to it. They were just showing on the Big Fox here the fact that and they're all out at the Reagan Library this weekend for, I know it's an annual confab. The Reagan National Defense Survey came out this week, and it showed a lot of bad indicators about the preparedness of our military. We're like failing in every category, and Americans are noticing. They're noticing that we are weaker, not stronger, from the Afghanistan evacuation to Joe Biden's mishandling of communist China.
And that's one of the issues dealing with this end of the year, trying to get a budget done. There is talk of doing a continuing resolution for the next year until October, which what that does is it freezes spending at the current levels, which as conservatives, we like a spending to be cut. But this also affects the military, and the military is complaining that this affects some of their contracts, and that with the continuing resolution at this year's budget levels, that's affect a budget cut because of inflation. So that's kind of a bad thing about this one-year CR that McConnell is negotiating with Schumer about.
Yeah, we'll have to talk to Jim Talon about that on Monday and get his thoughts not only on the Reagan National Defense Survey and all the bad news that came out of that, but the funding of the military. I'll bet you Jim's going to tell us that the Biden administration isn't funding the military anywhere near what it should be, while we spend trillions of dollars on this climate cult and this green fever dream.
Yeah, and it said with this year's spending going into next year, inflation is at 7%, 8%. I mean, that's an 8% cut in the Pentagon budget. And we had Senator Jim Talon on last week, and remember what he told us, that if the American people knew how much disrepair our military is in, especially when it comes to our ships and our submarines, they would be appalled. There's not going to be money for that if they just do a continuing resolution.
Well, you heard whose fault that is, the inflation this week, didn't you? It's our fault for all these luxury goods we've been buying, according to Janet Yellen on the late night comedy show.
Yeah, it's amazing because first they said that inflation is transitory, and then they said this is Putin's price hikes, and now it's our fault. So it's been it eventually got down to us.
Stell's been purchasing too many Pelotons in his spare time.
And until it shows you what a crazy statement is that inflation is caused by Americans overheating the economy. It's like, look, it's consumer spending accounts for 2/3 of the economy. Most retailers make the majority of their money for the year during the Christmas season. To hear a administration official talking down spending is just ludicrous. I know we have high inflation, and that's part of the process of raising the rates to cut spending. But don't denigrate us who make the economy.
Yeah, you know where all the money is? It's not in people's pocketbooks. It's in the government coffers. In the state of Missouri alone, this came out this week, the state of Missouri is projected in the very near future to have a $15 billion surplus. Just to give you an idea how big that number is, when I left the house 8 years ago, our budget was approximately $25 billion. We're now projected to have a $15 billion surplus with a total budget of over $45 billion. So the money is in the government coffers because the federal government put it there, Janet Yellen. And don't you guys get aggravated that these high-ranking administration officials go on late-night comedy talk shows to make news? They won't sit for a real interview with a real interviewer.
Yeah, they've taken the calculation years ago that your average American will not watch the nightly news. If you watch the nightly news nowadays, all of the commercials are about some medication or Geritol or directed towards old people. So they did this, I think, during 1992 when Bill Clinton resurrected his career going on his presidential campaign, going on the Arsenio Hall show and playing the saxophone with the Blues Brothers glasses on. I think that kind of set the template for presidential candidates to start doing late night TV because it resurrected Slick Willie's campaign.
Man, I miss Arsenio Hall.
You liked Arsenio?
I did.
That's a blast.
Those that are watching, I was doing the pump.
That's a blast from the past.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, I think they also feel like it's safe ground for them and that hardly anybody's watching because the viewership of these late night shows has plummeted to the point where Greg Gutfeld's news infotainment show on Fox News on a cable network is now beating all of the traditional nighttime network news shows, network comedy shows.
I mean, the audience has gone down from its heyday, but it's still a significant audience to go on and get a message out to people who get their news from Stephen Colbert instead of the nightly news or reading different publications. So it's still an audience to target.
Well, and I'm glad she did it because she screwed up. She blamed Americans for all of the problems that they've created. Speaking of the economy, I've got a little follow-up on it related to the jobs report that came out today. The Biden administration is crowing about it, but there are some canaries in the coal mine, and that is the subject of today's Stump Speech.
Listen to me, listen to me.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
See, that's another reason we need communism.
It's time for the Speaker's Stump Speech, sponsored by Hanson's Tree Service at hansonstree.com.
So there's a lot of problems with what many in the Biden administration would call the excellent jobs report today. So the economic forecasters, they missed their mark again. This time to the low side. They had projected an estimated 200,000 jobs would be created in this last month of October. Instead, it was more like 275,000. Now, at first blush, everybody may be thinking, oh, great, happy days are here again. But many people are extremely concerned about this. One of them would be Jerome Powell at the Fed. Jerome Powell was not at all happy about that because he's trying to have the opposite effect on the economy. The Fed is trying to slow the economy down. They're doing it with a series of rate hikes, which have been extremely painful for many. Who? Well, if you're in the real estate industry, in the mortgage industry, in the lending industry, if you have to do anything with the back and forth of the monetary financial situations in our country, then you're being hurt right now as interest rates are approaching 6, 7, 8%. So Jerome Powell's not happy about this glowing jobs report because he's sitting there going, what else do I have to do? I'm trying to step on the brakes, and the opposite effect is having. So in addition, you may be thinking, well, but still though, Tim, isn't that a great thing that the jobs report came back higher than expected? Well, who are those Who are those workers with those jobs? There are many stories out there that are saying it's the same worker working more jobs. So your jobs may be increasing, but your actual people working full-time jobs in the workforce is actually falling, and it has been falling over the last 12 months. How do I know that? Well, simply because I've looked at the statistics. Did you know, folks, that over 500,000 Americans left the labor force in the first 18 months of the Biden administration? Yeah, that's right. Nearly 2 years. I guess we're approaching almost the third year mark since the pandemic started. The labor force participation rate, which is a much more adequate and healthy measurement of the true nature of the economy. And we'll ask Dr. Aaron Hedlund about that next when he comes on with us to see if I'm correct on that or not. I think it's a much healthier measurement of where the economy really is because I've had so many economists tell me that. It has not recovered to pre-pandemic levels. That means Joe Biden is really failing to get the whole of the economy back on track. Under President Donald Trump, for comparison, Americans entered the labor force. The labor force increased. There were more people in it. For example, the rate of women in the labor force consistently rose month over month under Trump pre-pandemic. What's happened? Well, many would argue the Democrats' excessive welfare policies, the multi-trillion-dollar expansion of the welfare state incentivized many people to avoid work and instead sit at home and wait for more and more government checks. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, who's that? That's the government. That's the federal government. Their data shows that between November 2021 and November 2022, the last 12 months, over 506,000 Americans dropped out of the labor force. Rick Santelli, you know the guy who's credited with starting the Tea Party with Stop the Spending, Stop the Spending, Stop the Spending on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange? Yep, he's a reporter on CNBC. He summed up the jobs report today with a labor force participation rate of 62.1%, one of the lowest ever in our nation's history. Think about that, folks. Only 62%. That means nearly 40% of the country is not in the labor force. The labor force participation rate, Rick Santelli said, is moving in the wrong direction. This is not good. It's declined now for 3 straight months. In November alone, a whopping 186,000 people left the labor force. Don't let the Biden administration fool you with their fake, phony statistics of, well, there's all these jobs that are being created, and that means happy days are here again. No, you got to peel back the onion. You got to look at all the layers. That's what we'll do next with Dr. Aaron Hedlund, and that's the stump speech for today, December the 2nd, 2022. There you have it. I was talking to Chris about the fact the labor force participation rate continues to fall even as these jobs numbers continue to go up because many feel that it's the same people working multiple jobs. So they count the jobs over and over and over again for the same people, while nearly 40% of the labor force is still out of the labor force.
Exactly. I had a question I was going to ask Dr. Hedlund. New York Times report says that men ages 35 to 44, middle-aged men, have not come back to the economy after the pandemic. And, you know, he's an academic. I'm sure he's done some research. I'd like to know why.
That question and that answer will be up next when we speak to Dr. Aaron Hedlund, chief economist at the Show Me Institute. He joins us to further unpack this jobs report and tell us, give us the real bee's knees, the real skinny on it when the Tim Jones and Chris Arps show rolls on here at 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton with your first alert forecast. A wind advisory continues through 3 a.m. In fact, when the front passes through tonight around midnight, it can produce a quick and brief shower, but also some stronger winds right around midnight to 3 a.m. So some late night window rattling winds tonight. And then overnight after that brief shower potential, dry and colder behind this front. A low of 29, a high of just 39. A brighter day and sunny, but it's a winter feel on Saturday. Bundle up. Sunday, a low of 27, a high of 48, partly cloudy and dry. That's the latest first alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Blindster.com sells custom-made blind shades and shutters that are easy to install at prices less than big box retailers. Blindster blinds, custom-made for your windows and guaranteed to fit. Don't hire a pro, do it yourself and save big. Blindster.com. They wrapped up the crash northbound 270 at I-70. Weekend construction has traffic down to a single lane, both east and westbound 270 between Riverview and Illinois Route 3. That started at 5 and already seen a backup eastbound. They cleared the vehicle fire westbound 70 west to 79. Also cleared the earlier car fire westbound 70 west to Forestel. Traffic stacks up at Route Z. And a crash westbound 4064 at Prospect. All lanes are blocked. Traffic coming to a stop at Winghaven. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic
Free
Center.
speech is alive and well in America.
Sometimes it's hard to know what's real and what isn't.
Right here.
The country is heading in the wrong direction under this president.
We're suffering shortages. America's running out of everything.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion.
Is your portfolio prepared for the biggest risks facing investors today? Hi, it's Tim Jones. High inflation and a rapidly changing economy may impact your investments. If you haven't made appropriate changes, your portfolio may not be positioned to address some of the biggest risks in today's economy. That means it's time to request your free portfolio review from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. You can hear their latest views on the markets and investing during On the Money, hosted by Stifel financial advisors Bob Stockdale and Eric Robert, every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on News Talk STL 101.9. They can help you get organized, guide you through critical retirement decisions, and create a portfolio designed around your needs. To schedule your free portfolio review, go to clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com, 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas & Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
Subscribe and watch your favorite News Talk STL shows. Mike Ferguson in the morning, The Vic Porcelli Show, Columbo and Katie, Jones and Arps. Webcam streaming on Facebook, Twitter, Rumble. Subscribe and watch News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. We give you news, analysis, opinion, and more. Only on News Talk STL.
Last year, retailers saw crime spike more than 26%. I'm joined now by Matt Shea. He's the chief executive at the National Retail Federation. Matt, you call theft shrinkage. I believe that's the technical word for it, shrinkage. I'm told that in some cities in America, shrinkage is 20%.
That's true.
You lose 20% of what's in the store to theft. Is that accurate?
That's true. We had a group of retail CEOs together this week, many leaders from major retailers across the country. And I would say right behind concerns about the economy, the strength of the consumer, monetary policy, the Federal Reserve, inflation, the number one issue is organized retail crime. It is hurting these cities. It is hurting urban areas, employees, team members, and we need a really coordinated effort. We've got a day next week in Washington, Retail Crime Day. We're going to have crime fighters, hundreds of contacts with members of Congress to push this legislation.
That's fighting organized shoplifting, as I call it.
Welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show. Chris, another bad policy. You wonder if it's all planned out, isn't it? Defund the police and their soft on crime policies affecting the failing economy as well.
Yeah, and in fact, like they said in that quote, also affect urban areas. You know, today, this week, John Bowman, who is president of the St. Louis County NAACP, they are raising a lot of red flags because they don't want Dearborn supermarkets to get tax subsidies to build a supermarket on the old Crestwood Mall property. And they are wondering why won't Dearborg's build a place in North County, North City, which they have a supermarket in North County. But it comes down to shrinkage. And that's why Schnucks and Dearborg's and a lot of these places have left North County and North City, because they have to have security guards there, and security guards cost money, and that adds to the price of things. And so they just eventually just say it's just not worth it anymore.
And actually, Dearborg's is nowhere in the city.
Yeah. I don't think they ever been in the city?
No, the closest store is the one that's by the River to Pear.
Okay.
Right off of Watson / Chippewa there. And I just remember that from all the years we've lived in the city. They never have had a store in the city.
So basically, they're advocating for them to put a store in there so they can lose money so they can do the right thing.
What a shame that Dearborgs doesn't feel that they have a good business model to be in the city. That's really terrible.
Yeah, because they have great stores.
Well, no business model is going to work too well when people are stealing or robbing you blind.
Have you noticed the things that they have locked up now in stores? Things that they never ever locked up. And they put the big plastic caps and things and tie things down. It's like, good Lord! It's like we're in some weird, like Escape from Alcatraz.
Yeah, I first noticed that a few years ago when I was going to buy some laundry detergent for my mom. And I was like, my God, the Tide is behind plastic? You need somebody to get some laundry detergent now?
It's really insane.
And then razors, you can't get razors by yourself.
Yeah, you're right. Toothpaste.
Yeah, toothpaste some is. Yeah.
It's really shocking, and it just shows the state of affairs. That shrinkage indeed. Let's talk to our next guest about all of these economic issues that we have time for this afternoon with Dr. Aaron Hedlund, chief economist at the Show Me Institute, former White House CEA, chief domestic economist, and more at Aaron_Hedlund on Twitter. Dr. Hedlund, welcome back to the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show.
Pleasure to join you as always.
Mm-hmm.
So, Dr. Hedlund, how about the big top of the fold, above the fold, head leading Chiron news blast today? And that was the jobs report. Of course, Dr. Hedlund, as always, anytime there's a glimmer of good news, the Biden administration takes it and runs with it and talks about that and only that. Is there more to consider, Dr. Hedlund, than a glowing jobs number, which was above what the forecasters anticipated?
Yeah, there absolutely are several messages beyond just what the Biden administration would like to focus on. So what they're focusing on is the 263,000 number, pretty good number. Unemployment's still low. And actually wage growth was pretty high, which, by the way, means that the Fed is probably going to keep on raising rates because it means inflation's not going away anytime soon. But here's an interesting nugget that I bet you're not hearing about, which is that if you can – the jobs report is really two different surveys. One is how many jobs there are. The other is how many people are employed. And the part that looks at how many people are employed actually fell. Meanwhile, the number of people with two jobs went up. So some of those job gains appear to be people who are taking on second jobs, probably because they need help paying the bills with all the inflation.
Dr. Hedlund, best-selling author Robert Kiyosaki, we all know his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He's warning that the economy is, quote, the biggest bubble in history, and he's urging investors to dump paper assets. I know that you are a real estate expert. That's one of the assets that he is urging people to invest in. What's your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, well, I would say in a rising interest rate environment, a lot of these things are going to have a tough time. Real estate is, I think, in the long run, real estate, stocks, all those things are positive in the long run. But I think the housing market's in for tough times. That's one of the big downsides of inflation right now is house prices are going to be coming down because, frankly, people can't afford as much house when interest rates are 6-7% compared to when they're 3%.
Mm-hmm. Speaking to Dr. Aaron Hedlund of the Show Me Institute. Dr. Hedlund, the other thing that we noticed in the jobs report today, and you made reference to it in the answer you previously gave about the two different surveys. First of all, could you unpack that a little further? There's the jobs report, and then there's I think it's called the household survey, right? And could you again explain a little bit more what those have to do with? And isn't it true that the labor force participation rate, which I think you were basically implicitly referring to, it's continuing to drop? So they can keep saying there's all these jobs out there, but they're not talking about, like you did, the types of jobs they are. One person may be working 3 or 4 or 5 part-time jobs. Shouldn't be the economy that we want to rebuild, should it?
For sure. That's definitely not the economy we want to be at. So basically, they survey businesses to count how many jobs there are. And that's the payroll number. That's the 263,000 number. But then they also survey households to see what fraction of people are working. And that's where you get the unemployment number, and that's also where you get the labor force participation number. And it's interesting to compare the two. And what we see is that jobs are up, but still you've got a lot of people on the sidelines, fewer people, a smaller percentage of people are in the labor force compared to pre-COVID. And you've got fewer people, according to the survey, working, but more people working 2 jobs. So it seems like that increase in jobs that we're seeing on the business side is really, at least a lot of that, people taking on second jobs because they can't keep up with the bills.
Dr. Hedlund, I can't think of her name, but I'll call her name. Pocahontas, the senator from Massachusetts, she makes one of these class warfare arguments that absolutely drives me nuts when it comes to the Federal Reserve. And we all know that, you raise interest rates in a heating up economy to try to slow it down. Well, she says that is a policy that the Fed does to hurt workers and to reward business interests. Can you dispel that? I just hate when she says that.
It's a completely bizarre talking point. I mean, what workers have been hurt by over the past couple of years is their paychecks shrinking in value. And that's been happening because of high inflation. So we need someone to deal with that. And unfortunately, Senator Warren and the Biden administration and progressive left, they've been pushing inflationary policy after inflationary policy for the past couple of years. And even after the election, they basically said, we're going to do nothing different. So they keep pushing student debt bailouts, and they want to reinstate the anti-work child tax credit. All of these things are causing prices to rise and paychecks to shrink. And the Fed is the only adult in the room. They were a little late to the game for sure, but they're the only adult in the room that's doing anything about the problem at the moment.
Dr. Aaron Hedlund, we spoke earlier about Janet Yellen's comment on late night comedy show where, the Secretary of the Treasury should probably not be trying to make news, but she made some bad news when she blamed the inflationary problem in large part on Americans and our alleged spending habits. Dr. Aaron Hedlund, it is so aggravating to have to go back and take a walk down memory lane, but I think a lot of people, they hear things and then they hear a different thing and they think, well, that must be the new story. But this issue of inflation that has been plaguing the country for well over a year now, how much would you say it has to do with blaming the American people splurging on luxury items versus the government spending trillions of dollars through the Inflation Reduction Act and other pet projects of the Biden administration?
It's a completely bizarre reversal of how things should be done. I mean, the public elects leaders to do the public's wishes. When the leaders fail, they should not be blaming the public. They should be looking at their own policies. And this applies to blaming the public. It also applies to blaming quote-unquote greedy corporations. The reality is when you look at the data, inflation was low and stable for decades up until the passage of the big stimulus bill under the Biden administration in the spring of 2021. And we've been dealing with the carnage from that ever since. This isn't because consumers suddenly became irresponsible or companies suddenly became greedy. This is because of bad policy.
Dr. Hedlund, an opinion writer in Bloomberg.com, says that stagflation is just what the economy needs and that we should have an elevated period of unemployment and inflation. Do you agree with that, sir?
No, I'm definitely never on team stagflation. I can tell you that. I'm always on team pro-growth.
There you go.
And in fact, if we had pro-growth supply-side policies, we could simultaneously have more people working and lower prices. Because guess what? Part of the reason we have inflation is these labor shortages. Businesses are having a hard time accommodating demand because they can't find the workers. So what they do is they raise prices because, again, of the stuff that's being driven by bad policy.
Speaking to Dr. Aaron Hedlund of the Show Me Institute, Aaron_Hedlund on Twitter, showmeinstitute.org. Dr. Hedlund, bill filing began here in the state of Missouri for the General Assembly's regular session, which will begin the first Wednesday in January, less than a month away, or about a month away now. And I've heard many legislators, Dr. Hedlund, talking about the fact they'd like to consider cutting the income tax here in the state of Missouri. That's against the backdrop of the largest ever state budget following a series of income tax cuts and a projected $15 billion surplus over the next couple of years. Dr. Hedlund, should Missouri legislators should they consider yet another cut to our income tax system? What would you like to see it look like, and is it a good idea?
They should absolutely consider very seriously and then act upon bringing the income tax rate down. I mean, you can look at states like Texas, Tennessee, Florida, gangbusters growth. And actually, even if you look at Missouri over the past few years, since income taxes started to come down in 2018 when the first one was triggered, we've started to improve ourselves. We used to be about 47th out of 50 in terms of growth, which is pretty horrible. And we're not great now, but we've moved up about 10 spots. So we're doing better than we were. And if you look about population movements, like people voting with their feet, if you compare us to Kansas, it used to be the case that more Missourians were going to Kansas than the other way around. Now more people are coming to us. And you can look at some of the other states as well. Illinois, we've been winning against Illinois for a while because it's such a basket case over there. But we've been getting further and further ahead because while Illinois raises taxes, we're cutting them. So we should keep on following that very positive pro-growth recipe.
Dr. Hedlund, a bipartisan House Select Committee is set to release what they're calling a first-of-its-kind documentary-style film on income inequality in America. Do you promise after you review that film with your family that you will come back and give us a review of that film, sir?
Well, I can't say I'm excited about reviewing it, but for the sake of serving the public, I will gladly do it.
We won't do that to you, Doctor. I'm just kidding. I can only imagine this. I'm sure this film will Goebbels, the German propaganda master. I think he will be very proud. Goebbels. I think he'll be very proud of this production.
Class warfare. It's amazing how that bad argument never goes away.
Aaron, I saw an interesting headline today, a Today in History headline. And on this day in history, in 2001, 21 years ago, Enron filed for bankruptcy. Well, now we have another debacle in our country that some have called makes Enron look like romper room, and that is this FTX scandal involving Sam Bankman-Fried. From what you've seen, read, heard, is this a potential economic scandal of epic proportions rivaling Enron, or is it much ado about nothing? And what, if anything, should Congress be doing instead of glorifying Sam Bankman-Fried and putting him on, primetime interviews on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos?
Well, I mean, the left is always looking for anyone who gives big money to the left gets the special treatment, and then when you realize the corruption is involved, they want to kind of change the subject. So that's nothing new. I'd say on the economic side, I mean, I don't see FTX affecting the whole economy per se, because crypto is still it's a relatively minor part of the economy. It obviously gets a lot of attention. But this just goes to show, we need to be careful. We need to be diligent. I don't think that the answer is Congress jumping in and doing a whole lot. It'd be great to have some oversight, but I'm definitely not a fan of overregulation either.
Dr. Hedlund, do you have an article that you want to recommend to us? And what is the last book you have read?
Oh, my goodness. Well, in terms of the last book I've read, I read so many articles. It's been a while since I've actually read a novel. That's something I should be doing over the holidays, that's for sure. Mm-hmm. People go to showmeinstitute.org. There's always a lot of great content on there. And actually, you mentioned bill filing. Pretty soon we'll be coming out with our legislative blueprint, which will have some really top-level ideas for what Missouri can do to keep moving up those growth rankings.
Fantastic. We'll stay tuned to showmeinstitute.org and talk to you about that next week as well as we move closer to the legislative session. Dr. Aaron Hedlund, thank you for joining Chris and I again today.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you as well. All right, there we go. We had our legal eagle and we had our economics eagle all on the same day as usual as we wrap up and head towards the weekend. It is 5:42. We've got one more segment to roll through this hour before we hit 6 o'clock. In the 6 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by Zach Smith, legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. And then at 8 p.m. tonight, Pocket Watching with JT. You should check out Pocket Watching with JT. Stell will be here with JT. They'll talk about a lot of economic, financial, and other news of the day. It's a very fun and entertaining show indeed that you'll learn lots from indeed. All right, Chris, Stell, and I will be back right after this on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, heading up towards the 6 o'clock hour. It's 5:43 in the Heartland, 101.9, 94.1, News Talk STL.
Hook me up a new revolution. This one is a lie. Sat around laughing and watched the last one die.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Traffic Center.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com. Blindster.com started in 2010 to provide custom blind shades and shutters at affordable prices. Their blinds are easy to install and shipping is free. Don't hire a professional. Do it yourself and save big. Blindster.com. Westbound 4064 completely shut down at Prospect. That's due to an injury crash just west of Prospect. Try to avoid the area. A vehicle fire westbound 70 west to 79. Expect delays westbound 70 Wentzville Parkway to Forestell. An earlier car fire west of Forestell. Now we have an accident reported in the same area. East and westbound 270 between Riverview and Illinois Route 3. Traffic down to one lane for weekend road work. The lanes are not scheduled to reopen until 5 a.m. Monday. And an accident southbound 270 at 55. I'm Tori Lyons from the News Talk STL Traffic Center.
From the News Talk STL Weather Center.
I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton with your first alert forecast. A wind advisory continues through 3 a.m. In fact, when the front passes through tonight around midnight, it can produce a quick and brief shower, but also some stronger winds right around midnight to 3 a.m. So some late night window rattling winds tonight. And then overnight after that brief shower potential, dry and colder behind this front. A low of 29, a high of just 39. A brighter day and sunny, but it's a winter feel on Saturday. Bundle up. Sunday, a low of 27, a high of 48, partly cloudy and dry. That's the latest First Alert forecast. I'm News 4 Chief Meteorologist Steve Templeton.
If you find yourself feeling out of place in the world, it's comforting to know conservative values haven't been abandoned everywhere.
The far left wants to destroy conservative values in America.
This is News Talk STL. Welcome home.
Hey, folks, let me tell you all about The Range St. Louis West. You can get an early jump on your Christmas preparations at The Range St. Louis West. And in just a few days, we'll be launching the 12 Days of Christmas specials. So stay tuned for that. What is The Range? Well, it's a wonderful location right here in the county of St. Louis where they specialize in training everyday people like you and I to become our own best first responders. How do they do that? Well, with an incredibly awesome, knowledgeable staff. John, Ron, Chris, Elizabeth, Phil, the whole gang on down, former and current law enforcement, military, professional shooters with real-world experience to help you make purchases, to help you sign up for the right kinds of training classes to become more proficient, and so much more. They have a fantastic facility where they practice this craft. It's got a beautiful showroom floor, inventory floor, lots of more accessories than you can even have imagined. Downstairs, the climate-controlled range, 20 lanes, 3 climate-controlled bays, very comfortable, very cool place. I've been there many times, offering new and experienced shooters a place to train away from all the elements as the elements roll into the heartland for sure. The range has the best training value around for new and experienced shooters, the best membership value. They got membership plans. That's a nice stocking stuffer, and it's great training with a whole variety of courses. Also make good gifts at a great value. Check them out anytime 24/7 at therangestl.com in the heart of the county of St. Louis on Manchester Road in Baldwin, right next to the Baldwin Police Department, therangestl.com, therangestl.com.
1949, the last time a Republican held the top post in St. Louis City. A gallon of milk was 84 cents, and streetcars ran down Grand Avenue. The city was booming. Unfortunately, St. Louis city streets are no longer the epicenter of family and business life. In the 80 years of Democrat control, our city has been on a steady decline. St. Louis City Republicans believe it is our duty to provide a different path forward. Learn more at stlouisrepublicans.com.
Paid for by St. Louis City Republican Pat Curtis, Farber Treasurer.
Speaker Tim Jones here. Have you heard about the brand new best St. Louis sports bar and grill experience in the region? Johnny's Hideout in High Ridge, Missouri. 10 minutes from 270 and Gravois. 30 TVs, a huge game room, a great outdoor patio, the Sunset Patio, complete with the Sunset Stage and the train station bar. Open 6 days a week, serving lunch and dinner, featuring famous Johnny Dow's chicken wings and the best barbecue in town. When you're there, check out the VIP Speaker of the House table on your next visit. On the web, jhideout.com. That's Johnny's Hideout in High Ridge.
Mike Ferguson in the morning.
Let's talk about the 2024 election on Monday. Should Republicans go ahead and get behind Donald Trump right now or have more choices in the race?
Morning starting at 5:30 on News Talk STL. Welcome home to St. Louis's new choice for conservative talk.
Definitely not a Republican wave, that's for darn sure.
Let me start off with 2 words.
News, analysis, and opinion.
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Now the 2024 presidential election is in front of us.
The G20 summit.
Climate change and food security.
And I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. This hour of Jones and Arps is brought to you by Stifel. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com. like us on Facebook at News Talk STL.
Yeah, but Twitter's a private company too. So why is Twitter getting one treatment and Apple's getting another is my question.
Well, these are completely two different circumstances. You're talking about the potential. Well, you're talking about the potential for perhaps foreign investment and involvement in the management of Twitter. That's a different issue than what we're talking about here, which is a business decision by Apple with respect to how one of their applications is being utilized.
Certainly,
Those
they're
are two
getting
different
influenced
issues.
by a foreign government, and that government is China. And Apple's policies, they've changed policies specifically for China when it comes to what they put on their phones.
Right.
I mean,
And
that seems like something that the White House ought to be able to keep an eye on.
I certainly think that's a fair question to ask Apple and try to make them communicate why they did this.
But I'm asking, has the White House done that? Have you reached out to them as a matter of national security, since we obviously have national security concerns with China, who they seem to be aiding in this process?
Sure. I don't have any communications to speak to specifically with Apple executives. Again, it's a private company. They make these policies, and they should have to answer for that. What we want to see is that citizens are reliably able to communicate, whether it's a time of crisis or not.
Yeah, but I go back to this same thing, because we were just told that the White House will keep an eye on Twitter because they're concerned about the new Twitter 2.0 that Elon Musk is putting in, where he wants more free speech on Twitter. So they're going to keep an eye on Twitter, and yet you're taking a hands-off approach. You say there's been no communication with Tim Cook at Apple about this process in China with the Chinese government?
Martha, I'm not aware that there's been any conversations specifically with Apple on this particular issue. It's a private company. And as for Twitter, again, Martha, these are apples and oranges.
Whew. Boy, Martha McCallum knows how to go toe-to-toe, doesn't she? I mean, she's fantastic when she gets fired up.
Yeah, she was. That was 60 Minutes quality there.
That's I put her way above them. It's an ideological problem the White House has, don't you think? I mean, they don't have a problem with Apple because Apple does business in China and the administration wants to protect China. But of course, they're going to get all up in Elon Musk's business because he has a different ideological slant than Apple apparently these days.
Yeah, and it just shows the hypocrisy of our national sports leagues like the NBA and our Hollywood, who are bending over backwards because of the Chinese market and the billions of dollars they can make.
Mm-hmm. Forgot to mention this earlier today. We did mention that we're going to start doing giveaways next week. Need to remind you all that you can register at newstalkstl.com as many times as you want to give yourselves a better chance to win some of our fantastic prizes that we're giving away for the St. Louis Conservative Christmas, here for our second Christmas already at News Talk STL. Gift cards from Steph's Pizza, Great Harvest Bread Company, Bluff City Outdoors, tickets to the aquarium here at Union Station and the Big Wheel. We've got T-shirts. We've got Nutcracker tickets, courtesy of the St. Louis Ballet, tickets for Monster Jam, Disney on Ice, the City Museum, all kinds of stuff and more. That'll start next week, but you can go to newstalkstl.com and register now. Can we believe we're talking about Christmas? It's 23 days away.
Amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Christmas parties start, I know, this weekend. Folks, be careful as you're out and about. You heard Steve Templeton talk about these winds. It's really windy outside, and they're supposed to really pick up overnight until about 3 a.m. And then I guess the good Lord shuts the fan off or something. I'm not sure what happens.
It's unusually warm outside, and, when it's warm in the winter, there's tornadoes and thunderstorms and rough weather like that. And I'm just realized I'm talking to a meteorologist.
To be honest with you, we asked Steve why we haven't been getting much rain as these fronts have come through over the last couple of weeks, and he said there just hasn't been enough precipitation forming in this area. But you were down in Louisiana where they had a ton of storms the last couple of days, and they had enough precipitation coming off of the Gulf of Mexico to help those storms form down there. We just haven't had much here at all. And you're right, you would normally expect some pretty intense weather. Speaking of being down there, we had earlier in the show talked about you being in Baton Rouge, and Tim, you made a comment about Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And Linda Schlottelbach, one of our great listeners, pointed out that it's actually based in Savannah, Georgia.
Oh, that was in Georgia.
And I made that
just
mistake
up the road.
too.
Yeah.
I always thought it was New Orleans, and my wife corrects me, and she told me, no, it was in Savannah, Georgia.
And by the way, Linda said the book is really good, but the movie's only so-so.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Well, thank you to Linda. As usual, and as is customary, the women in our life are always correct.
That's right.
That was what's his name in that movie? The weirdo who's in trouble for everything right now?
Yeah.
You know who I'm talking about? From
Kevin Spacey.
Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, golly.
Yeah. Ooh, talk about a career that fell hard.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and he's trying to make a comeback. I think somebody was going to put him in a film lately, and then they changed their mind. And it's a shame. I don't particularly care for his politics or his personal lifestyle, but he's a very good actor. I will give him that. Same with Sean Penn. I don't care for his politics, but I can't take away the fact that both of them are very good actors.
I thought Spacey was out of legal trouble at this point, but apparently he's now under all sorts of investigations and indictments in the UK. So he's dealing with stuff across the pond now with involvement that he had over there.
Look, the Bill Cosby incident should let you know that there are no statute of limitations on allegations, and that if someone can claim that you drugged her and raped her back in the 70s and in the 2000s, you can be convicted for that and go to jail. There is no statute of limitations, it seems, on sexual allegations.
And to make matters worse with Spacey, they're not just talking about hers, they're talking about hims. Him as well. So he's got all kinds of, and I think he's got civil suits as well for multi-millions of dollars that he's being pursued on. So he's got a long time to.
Well, speaking of the UK, we had talked about it a little bit yesterday and the day before, the passing of Christine McVie from Fleetwood Mac. And for those of us who grew up with their music, and she goes back to the early 70s with the band, it was a kind of a shocker. And I did not realize she was 79.
I didn't either. I didn't realize she was almost 80 years old.
Yeah.
Still, I bet you played a lot of Fleetwood Mac over the years.
A ton.
And was that the band that had some of the most drama, that actually they stayed together despite all their internal drama that they had with each other?
And a lot of times great music comes out of turmoil within a band, and the Rumors album from them sold a bazillion copies. And that album had probably some of their best stuff on there with a ton of hit singles. And you're right, the turmoil within a band, it was really interesting to look at all the stuff that went on with them.
You know, I had a wake-up call on a rock star, superstar. He's gone, no longer with us, but Jimi Hendrix would have been 80 this year. And I was like, in your head, intellectually, you're like, yeah, he should be about that age. But you're like, Jimi Hendrix, 80?
Yeah.
But the Rolling Stones and all of those 60s rockers are in their 80s. So
Tony and I had joked yesterday about, in your mind, you're still thinking most of these folks are in their 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And then you realize, no, the years have gone by.
They have. So, play yourself some Fleetwood Mac over the weekend. There's many albums to choose from. They were always they were always like that esoteric band, very atmospheric music, kind of dream quality stuff, and the wild costumes. And how old's Stevie Nicks now? Is she approaching 82?
She must be. She's got to be up there. Yeah.
I thought they performed not too long ago. I thought they did something in the not too distant past, but now they've lost Christine McVie, so that's a big loss to the band. Indeed.
Didn't they fall out though? Still,
yes, they had a lot of issues in the band. Although I think Stevie has come out and said, a lot of that stuff was blown out of proportion. But still, yes, there were a lot of issues that came up. And her musical history goes back to a band called Chicken Shack in the late '60s.
Really?
Yeah,
Chicken Shack.
She won awards as being a best vocalist in Great Britain back in those years. And then she joined Fleetwood Mac, and the rest is history as far as that band is concerned. But yeah, she had been around for a long time.
Still, I thought I was going to have to press the button on you there. Chicken Shack. Worried me there for a second.
The Chicken Shack.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we've about put this can in, or this can. I almost said this can in the hour. In the hour in the can.
Put the show in the can.
Can you tell it's late on a Friday? Yeah. It is 5:58. It's been great for Chris and I to be back with you here this afternoon. I think we're both here next week, right?
They're here this week, and then I'm taking off Thursday the following week.
Okay, very good. And I got some travel coming up as well. It's a busy time of year as everybody does their year-end meetings and conferences in preparation for 2023, which we're definitely all doing. with all of you all. All right, remember, next week the Christmas giveaways will begin. We're going to take a pause here for Un Momento, and then we'll be back with our 6 o'clock hour featuring Zach Smith of the Heritage Foundation. Get you caught up on everything at the Supreme Court and more on the Tim Jones and Chris Arps Show, 1019-94.1 News Talk STL.
In times of economic uncertainty and chaos, your money means nothing. You may not even be able to get it from your bank or ATM. And the money you do have in the stock market will go down and down. What you can bank on is gold and silver. Gold and silver have been a reliable and trusted form of currency for thousands of years. Gold and silver have never been worth zero, and typically gold holds its value during economic turmoil. Call the Gold Hotline now and learn how to protect your money and your assets with gold and silver. And learn how to set up a new IRA or roll over your current one into a gold-backed IRA. Protect your money from the next market crash with gold and silver. Call now for your free gold guide.
800-281-4224. 800-281-4224. 800-281-4224. That's 800-281-4224.
KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefonte, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
News this hour from townhall.com. I'm Keith Peters reporting. The group of 7 nations, along with Australia, have joined the European Union in setting a $60 per barrel price cap on Russian oil. A key step as Western sanctions aim to reorder the global oil market to prevent prices spiking and starve President Vladimir Putin of his funding for his war in Ukraine. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby says the price cap on Russian oil is appropriate.
Limiting Mr. Putin's ability to profit off of oil sales and limit his ability to continue to use that money to fund his war machine.
The price cap aims to prevent a sudden loss of Russian oil to the world that could lead to a new surge in energy prices and further fuel inflation. InfoWars host Alex Jones has filed for personal bankruptcy. Correspondent Shelley Adler reports.
Facing nearly $1.5 billion in court judgments over his conspiracy theories about the Sandy Hook massacre, Alex Jones has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. His documents in a Houston court list $1 to $10 billion in liabilities owed to 50 to 99 creditors and $1 to $10 million in assets. The bankruptcy filing comes as Jones faces court orders to pay damages to relatives of victims of the 2012 Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting for calling the massacre a hoax. I'm Shelley Adler.
President Biden assured Americans on Friday that the U.S. economy is chugging along in the holiday season, but the very strength of a new jobs report showed that high inflation remains a recession threat. On Wall Street, the Dow up by 34 points. More on these stories at townhall.com.
I'll second guest dinners with friends because they can be interrupted by diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or oily stools. It turns out I have EPI, or exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, which means I'm missing the enzymes needed to digest food. My doctor prescribed Creon, pancrelipase, an oral prescription medication that replaces pancreatic digestive enzymes. Creon treats EPI due to cystic fibrosis, chronic pancreatitis, pancreatectomy, or other conditions.
Creon may increase your chance of fibrosing colonopathy, a rare bowel disorder. Tell your doctor if you have a history of intestinal blockage or scarring or thickening of your bowel wall, if you're allergic to pork, or if you have gout, kidney problems, or worsening of painful swollen joints. Call your doctor if you have any unusual or severe gastrointestinal symptoms or allergic reactions. Take Creon as